Hiding in her warded sanctuary, she's forced to watch as her vampire guardian is beaten and starved by his own kind. With a brutal enemy at the gates, she must make a fatal choice: let him die, or break the sacred magic, invite the monster into her room, and unleash a hunger that will destroy them both. Prologue. The floorboard in the West Gallery always groans. It's the third one from the window, the one carved with a rose. My father used to say it was the house's way of saying hello. Tonight, it was a scream. I didn't wait to see who stepped on it. I just ran. My bare feet slapped against the cold marble, the sound swallowed by the storm hammering at the mansion. Thunder cracked so loud the windows vibrated in their frames. I prayed it was the storm, not them. Not the hunters who had taken everything. Novia. His voice was a velvet roar, cutting through the chaos from the floor below. Listen. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Fear was a stone in my throat. I threw myself toward the east wing, toward my rooms. My sanctuary. The only place in this entire, sprawling prison he could not follow. I rounded the corner too fast. My hip slammed into a marble pedestal, sending a heavy vase crashing to the floor. I stumbled, my hand shooting out to break my fall. Pain, sharp and bright, lanced up my arm. I looked down. A long shard of porcelain was sticking out of the fleshy part of my palm. Blood, dark and instant, welled around it. A new sound joined the storm. A low, desperate growl from the hallway behind me. It wasn't a hunter. It was him. I ripped my hand back, ignoring the fire, and scrambled the last few feet. I grabbed the heavy brass handle of my bedroom door, threw my shoulder against the wood, and slammed it shut. The click of the ancient lock sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I was safe. Thud. A solid, heavy impact struck the other side of the door, making the entire frame shake. I fell back, clutching my bleeding hand to my chest. Novia. Lucen's voice was muffled, strained, vibrating through the solid oak. Are you hurt? I crawled backward, crab-walking until my back hit the leg of my bed. I'm fine, I lied, my voice a useless tremor. You are not. I can smell it. I froze. My gaze dropped to my hand. Blood was dripping freely now, patterning the antique rug. I had touched the doorknob. His side of the doorknob. My blood was on his side of the door. A low, animalistic sound came from the hallway. It was the sound of a man trying to breathe, but forgetting how. Novia, he said again, and my name was a wound. The hunters. They're inside the grounds. I know. I cried, pulling the shard from my palm with a wet, sickening tear. I pressed my hand against my nightgown, staining the white cotton. Let me in. My heart stopped. I can't. The wards on this house are failing. They found a way through the outer perimeter. This room, this is the only place they cannot enter. But you are trapped, little bird. Let me in. I can protect you. You are protecting me. I shot back, my voice hysterical. You're out there, they're out there. I'm safe in here. You are not safe. His voice was suddenly right against the wood, a terrifying, intimate whisper. You are bleeding. I can hear your heart. It's too fast. You are in pain. I was in pain. My hand was on fire, and my chest felt like it was being crushed. He was a monster. A beautiful, terrible monster assigned by his council to guard me, and I was his prisoner. He was a creature from those old, dark stories, all cool grace and perfect features, with eyes that saw too much. And he could not enter a sanctified space without permission. This room, my ancestors' room, was the most sanctified space in the United States. Go! I yelled, tears of panic finally breaking free. Go fight them. Leave me alone. I will not leave you. A crash echoed from the grand staircase. Glass shattered. Shouts. The hunters were in the house. Listen, they're here. His hand slammed against the door, right at the level of my head. I flinched, even though I knew he couldn't get through. The wood was 3 inches thick, but I felt the cold from his skin, the pure power he was holding back. "Listen to me," he commanded, his voice dropping into that low, hypnotic tone he used when he was close to losing control. "They cannot pass the threshold of this room. You are safe from them in there. Do you understand?" I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Yes, but I cannot defend the rest of the house while I am anchored to this door. I need you to be quiet. I need you to bandage your hand. The scent, it's making this difficult." Difficult. He made it sound like a math problem. I knew what he was. I knew what the smell of my blood was doing to him. He was a vampire, a prince of his kind, and he was starving. He was always starving. "I can't," I whispered, looking at my hand. I was shaking too hard to tie a bandage. "Yes, you can." His voice was softer now, but laced with an ironclad will. "Go to the bathroom. Get the kit. Do not be afraid, Novia. I will not let them touch you. I will handle our guests." I heard him turn. His footsteps were silent, but I felt him move away, a cold draft passing under the door. He was gone. He was gone to fight them. I was alone, safe from the hunters and safe from him. So why did I suddenly feel like the door was the only thing holding me up? I pressed my forehead against the cool, smooth wood, my blood-smeared fingers leaving a mark on the white paint. On the other side of the door, I knew his own handprint was there, right where mine was. A prison inside a prison. Hello, thank you for joining me for this new story. The tension is already so thick, I love it. I'm so curious to know, where are you watching from and what is the weather like there today? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this prologue and feeling that chill down your spine, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of Novia and Listen's story. Your support means everything. Now, on to the first chapter. Chapter 1. The sun rose 3 hours later, painting the sky in watery shades of gold and gray. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world that felt scrubbed raw. The silence of the house was worse than the shouting. I hadn't slept. I sat on the floor, my back against the door, a poorly wrapped bandage stiffening on my hand. My entire body felt like one giant bruise. I was listening for his return. I didn't know if he was alive or dead. I didn't know if the hunters were gone, or if they were just waiting, silent and patient, in the shadows of the mansion. My sanctuary had become a tiny, gilded cage. The golden hour light that I usually loved, the kind that set the dust motes dancing, now just illuminated my fear. It was too warm for the cold dread settling in my bones. A soft scrape came from the hallway. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. I scrambled to my feet, pressing my ear to the door. "Novia?" His voice. It was hoarse, exhausted, but it was him. Relief washed over me so fast my knees went weak. I sagged against the wood, my eyes closing. "Listen. You're all right." A heavy sigh. "For now. They are gone. Are you hurt?" There was a long pause. "It is not your concern. I have left you a tray. Food. And tea." I looked down at the sliver of light beneath the door. I couldn't see anything. He must have set it down and stepped back. He always stepped back. "I'm not hungry," I whispered. "You will eat," he ordered, but the command was brittle. "You are human. You are weak from blood loss. Eat, Novia." I hated when he was right. I was starving and my hand throbbed with a dull, persistent pulse. I slowly, carefully unlatched the lock. It felt impossibly heavy. I opened the door just a crack, just wide enough to see. He was standing 20 feet away, at the end of the hall, his back to me. He was silhouetted against the tall library window, the warm daylight making a halo of his dark hair. He was perfectly still, a statue of a man. He was wearing a fresh black shirt. The one he'd been wearing last night had been gray. I wondered what had happened to it, what, or who, had stained it. A silver tray sat on the floor, right on the threshold of my room. A small white rose, cut from the garden, lay beside a steaming cup of tea. He must have gone outside to get it. The thought of him taking the time to cut a flower after a night of fighting, it made my stomach twist. I reached out, my hand shaking, and pulled the tray inside. "Thank you." He didn't turn around. "The hunters breached the southern wards. They used a blood sacrifice. It seems your family's magic is not as strong as it once was." I flinched, pulling the tray close. It's just me. The magic needs a coven. I'm all that's left. I am aware." His voice was cold, formal. This was Lord Lussen, the prince, the council's enforcer. Not the man who had sounded so broken outside my door last night. "The council is displeased. They will be sending someone to assess the damage to the wards. And to you." My blood ran cold. "Sending someone? But you're here. You're my guardian." "I am your jailer," he corrected, his voice sharp as broken glass. "And I failed to keep the perimeter. The council does not tolerate failure. They want to ensure their investment is secure." Investment. That's all I was to them. A thing. A bloodline. The hunters wanted me dead because of what my blood could do. The council wanted me alive for the very same reason. I was trapped in the middle, a pawn in a war I never asked to join. "When?" I asked, my voice small. "Tomorrow." He finally turned. My breath caught. The warm, golden light of the morning was cruel. It showed me what the darkness had hidden. His perfect, sculpted face was bruised. A long, shallow cut ran from his high cheekbone to his jaw. It was healing, the skin knitting itself back together even as I watched, but it was dark with his strange, black blood. His lower lip was split. He had been hurt. He had been hurt protecting me, and he had lied. "You're hurt," I whispered, standing in the doorway. My hand was on the frame. My foot was on the magical line of the threshold. I was half in, half out. His eyes, usually the color of a clear winter sky, flashed with a dark, possessive fire. "It is nothing. It is already gone." "It's not gone," I insisted, taking a half step forward. The air between us crackled. I was outside my sanctuary. He was 20 feet away, but I felt the pull of him, like the moon pulling the tide. He was dangerous. He was the most dangerous thing in this house. And he was the only thing that felt real. "Go back inside, Novia," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Why? Are you afraid of me, Listen?" A dark, humorless laugh escaped him. "No, little bird. I am afraid of what I will do to you if you stay out here." "You mean what you want to do?" He took one fast, silent step toward me. I flinched, pulling back into my room. The ward line on the floor, an intricate inlay of silver and salt, flared with a faint blue light as I crossed it. He stopped, his boot heel inches from the glowing line. He was trapped on his side. I was safe on mine. The tension returned, thick and suffocating. "You play a very dangerous game," he hissed, his eyes locked on my bandaged hand. He could smell my blood from across the hall. Now, standing so close, it must have been a roar in his senses. "You're the one who's hurt," I said, trying to sound brave. "You should be. I don't know. Resting. Vampires do not rest. We heal." He looked at the split in his lip, then back at me. "The council's emissary will be here at sundown. Her name is Seraphine. She is not as patient as I am." "What does she want?" "To see you. To test the wards. And to remind me of my duty." He looked at the door, then at me. His gaze was heavy, possessive. "No matter what she says, no matter what she threatens, you will not leave this room. And you will not, under any circumstances, invite her in. Do you understand me, Novia?" The command in his voice was absolute. It was the command of a prince. What if she hurts you?" His eyes softened for just a fraction of a second. The blue turned from ice to sky. "She cannot hurt me in any way that matters. But you are the only one who can." He turned before I could answer, his long black coat swirling around him, and disappeared down the hall. I was left standing in the doorway, the scent of his tea mixing with the faint, metallic smell of his dark blood. He was right. I was playing a dangerous game. But I was starting to think I wasn't the only one. I closed the door, locked it, and finally began to eat. The food was tasteless, but the tea was warm, and it tasted like a single, perfect white rose. Chapter 2. I spent the day pacing. My room, once my sanctuary, had become a cage of my own making. It was a beautiful cage, filled with priceless antiques, a canopy bed draped in silk, and a fireplace big enough to stand in. But the warm, golden daylight that streamed through the tall windows only served to mock me. It was a beautiful day to be free, and I was a prisoner. I kept replaying his words. Her name is Seraphine. She is not as patient as I am. What did that mean? Lucen was the very definition of impatient patience. He was a creature of absolute stillness, a predator who could wait forever for his moment. But beneath that control, I always felt a simmering something. A tension of violence, held back by nothing but his own iron will. If Seraphine was less patient than that, what kind of monster was she? I touched the bandage on my hand. The bleeding had stopped, but the skin underneath felt tight and hot. I thought of Lucen's face, the cut on his cheek. I had seen it healing before my eyes. He was supernatural, a prince of a dark and powerful race. And yet, he could be hurt. That one fact changed everything. Before, he was just a concept, a terrifying guardian. Now he was real. He was vulnerable. As the sun began to dip, the golden light turned to a rich, warm amber, casting long, dramatic shadows across my room. This was the inspired by House of the Dragon light, the kind that made everything look epic and heavy with destiny. For me, it was just the beginning of the night. Their time. The dread started as a low hum in my stomach. I lit the lamps, but their soft glow couldn't push back the encroaching darkness. The house, silent all day, seemed to wake up. It groaned and settled, the old wood complaining as the temperature dropped. At precisely 6:02 p.m., I know, because I was staring at the porcelain clock on my mantel, I heard the front door open and close. It was a heavy, definitive sound that echoed up from the main hall. They were here. I didn't hear them approach. There were no footsteps, no whispers. One moment, the hallway outside was empty. The next, a presence was there. It was a coldness that seeped under the door, a pressure in the air that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I backed away from the door, my heart starting that same, frantic rhythm it had last night. A sharp, metallic tap-tap-tap hit the wood. It wasn't a knock. It sounded like a ring striking the oak. Novia. Lucen's voice. Flat. Devoid of all emotion. I am here, I whispered, my voice trembling. The emissary is with me. She wishes to speak with you. I am not. I didn't know what to say. I am not dressed for company. I am not in the mood for an interrogation. Open the door, girl. This new voice was like shards of ice. It was female, sharp, and laced with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. It was Seraphine. I pressed my lips together, my body frozen. I will not. A low, amused laugh. It speaks. How charming. Lord, listen, you failed to mention she had any spirit. I assumed she was simply a blooded pet. She is the ward of the council, emissary, Lucen replied. His voice was still a monotone, but I heard the strain. She is a human who has allowed this house, this fortress, to be breached, Seraphine snapped. Open the door, Novia. Allow me to see the council's investment. No. My voice was a little stronger this time. I was safe in here. I had to remember that. This was my power. No. Her laugh was gone, replaced by a deadly chill. You are a child, hiding in a closet. You think this room protects you? You think these little silver lines and old-world magic mean anything? Thud. I jumped, letting out a small shriek. She had struck the door, just as Lucen had. But his had been a sound of desperation. Hers was a sound of pure, contemptuous power. This ward is a courtesy, Seraphine hissed, her voice right against the keyhole. A relic of a forgotten treaty. The council honors it out of tradition. But traditions can be broken. You would not dare, Listen said. His voice was low, dangerous. The predator was stirring. Watch me, Prince. Another thud, harder this time. The door frame shook. A small puff of dust fell from the top. Stop it. I yelled. You'll break it. That is the idea, you stupid girl. Do you have any concept of what happened here last night? Of the insult? Hunters, filthy, diseased mortals, walked these halls. They smelled your pathetic, bleeding heart guardian and they laughed. And he let them go. Because he was too busy protecting you. I stumbled back. What? Listen, is that true? Listen was silent. He had them. Seraphine's voice was a triumphant, cruel song. 2 of them. Cornered in the library. He could have ended them. He could have torn them apart and brought their heads to the council to prove his strength. But he heard you. Crying in your room. He heard you whimpering over your little scratch. I looked at my bandaged hand. A little scratch. He bartered, Seraphine whispered, and the word was full of venom. He let them go, in exchange for them leaving the grounds immediately. He negotiated. All for a human girl who won't even show him her face. My world tilted. He hadn't just fought them. He had failed on purpose for me. He had broken his own laws, his own code, to keep me from being frightened. The punishment for that. I couldn't imagine it. He is weak, Seraphine said, as if reading my thoughts. He has been here too long. He has forgotten what he is. He watches this house, he watches you, and he has grown soft. I heard a sudden, sharp sound. A crack like bone hitting stone. It was followed by a low, pained grunt. My blood ran cold. Listen. No answer. Did you hit him? I scrambled to the door, my hand on the lock. He forgets his place, Seraphine's voice was calm. He must be reminded. As must you. Don't you touch him. I was shouting, my fist beating against the inside of the door. Or what? You'll open the door. She laughed. That's what I thought. You are a coward, Novia. You hide behind your magic while he bleeds for you. How very human. Listen. I called out, my voice cracking. Are you all right? I am fine, Novia. His voice was tight, full of pain. He is fine, Seraphine said brightly. We are leaving now. I have seen all I need to see. A broken ward, a compromised guardian, and a terrified little girl. The council will be most displeased. What are you going to do? I asked, my forehead pressed against the wood. We are going to find a new arrangement. One that does not rely on a crumbling house and a sentimental prince. Perhaps it is time we moved you to a safer location. Somewhere the hunters would never dare to look. Somewhere in the heart of the council's territory. A true prison. A dungeon. I would be their pet in a cage. No, I whispered. You can't. Oh, I can. Sleep well, little bird. I will be back tomorrow. And we will see each other. One way or another. I felt the coldness recede. The pressure in the hallway vanished. They were gone. I slid down the door, my legs giving out. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. She was right. I was a coward. I was hiding in my room while he was out there, taking beatings for me. He had failed his counsel. He had let his enemies go. He had disgraced himself. All for me. I looked at the heavy brass lock. It was no longer a symbol of my safety. It was a symbol of his chains. And I was the one who had put them on him. Chapter 3. Sleep was not a possibility. My room, my safe, gilded box, was now just a room. The magic in the threshold felt like a joke. It hadn't protected Listen. It had only trapped me. I spent the long, dark hours pacing the floor, every creak of the old house making me jump. The moon cast cold, white light through the windows, a stark contrast to the warm, epic tones of the day. This was the light of the grave. The light of the hunters. The light of him. Seraphine's voice was a recording in my head, playing on a loop. He bleeds for you. You are a coward, Novia. He has grown soft. I hated her. I hated her for her cruel, icy words, for her arrogance, for the sound of her hand striking him. But I hated myself more. Because she was right. I was a coward. I had been so focused on my own fear, on my own survival, that I had never once thought about what my safety was costing him. He was a prince. A warrior from a race of immortal predators. And he had negotiated with his mortal enemies. He had let them go. The shame of that, for him, must have been a living thing. He was out there, in the dark, in the silent, ruined house. Hurt, disgraced, and alone. The thought was a physical pain, a heavy stone in my chest. I waited for the dawn. It felt like a betrayal when the first hint of gray light touched the sky, slowly turning to that same, warm, romantic gold as the sun rose. It was a beautiful, clear morning. The kind of morning that promised everything was fine. It was a lie. I waited for the soft scrape of the food tray. I waited for his low, formal voice. Nothing. The silence was absolute. 6 a.m. became 7 a.m. 7 a.m. became 8. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of menace. What if Seraphine had come back? What if she hadn't left at all? What if she had taken him? What if he was gone, and I was just left here, a bird in a cage, waiting for the real monster to come and collect me? My fear for him finally became greater than my fear of him. My hand was on the brass lock before I even truly decided to move. My fingers were clumsy, shaking. I didn't just unlock it. I didn't just crack it open. I threw the door wide, the force of it making it slam against the hallway wall. The sound was a cannon shot in the quiet. Listen. The hallway was empty. But it was not clean. Dark, ugly smears stained the wallpaper. A long, blackish red streak marked the floor, as if something or someone had been dragged. My heart stopped. I followed the marks, my bare feet sticking to the floor. I crept down the main staircase, one hand on the banister. The grand hall was a war zone. The vase I had knocked over was still in glittering pieces. But now it was joined by an overturned settee, a painting slashed from its frame, and a large, dark pool staining the Persian rug. It was his blood. So much of it. Listen. I screamed his name, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just following the signs of destruction. I found him in the library. The room was wrecked. Books were torn from the shelves, their pages scattered like dead leaves. The heavy, oak table was split in two, as if hit by lightning. And he was there. He was standing in front of the cold, black fireplace, his back to me. The beautiful, warm daylight streamed through the tall, arched windows, illuminating him in a perfect, golden spotlight. He was not wearing a shirt. I made a sound, a small, choked gasp. His back was ruined. It was a canvas of deep, dark wounds. Long, angry gashes that looked like they were made by claws dipped in silver, the edges red and inflamed. They were healing, but far too slowly. And then I saw it. On his left shoulder blade, a perfect, 5-fingered handprint was burned into his skin. It was not a bruise. It was a brand. Black and blistering. Seraphine. I told you, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp, to stay in your room. He didn't turn. He just stood there, his hands braced on the marble mantelpiece, his head bowed. She branded you, I whispered, taking a step into the room. It is a mark of the council. A reminder of my failure. This isn't failure, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I didn't know I possessed. This is torture. It is our way. He tried to straighten, to summon his princely arrogance, but he winced, and his hand tightened on the mantel. I walked closer, my feet silent on the rug. I could see the muscles in his back pulling tight, the skin around the wounds stretched and pale. He was in agony. You let them go, I said. It wasn't a question. I did. For me. You heard me. You heard me crying. My charge was in distress. The hunters were a secondary threat. He said it like it was a report. Simple. Factual. A secondary threat? Listen, they were in the house. They could have killed you. He finally turned, and my heart broke. His face was pale, his skin almost translucent. The cut on his cheek was still there, barely healed. The split on his lip was open and raw. His eyes, usually so bright, were sunken and dark, the blue faded to a dull, exhausted gray. He was weak. He was weaker than I had ever seen any living thing. They could not kill me, he said, his voice how empty. But they could have hurt you. That was not an acceptable outcome. And this is. I gestured to his back, his chest. This is acceptable? This, he said, his gaze dropping to the floor, is the price of my sentiment. That word. Sentimental. The one Seraphine had used. It was an insult. A death sentence for his kind. You're not healing, I whispered, the horrifying realization dawning on me. I thought of the blood everywhere, the sheer amount he had lost. You haven't. My God, listen. You haven't fed. His head snapped up. His eyes flashed, a spark of the old fire. That is not your concern. It is my concern. You're hurt, you're starving. You can't heal if you're starving. That's why you're so weak. I am not weak, he roared, taking a step toward me. He pushed off the mantle, but his legs stumbled. He caught himself on the edge of the broken table, his breath hissing between his teeth. He was a liar. He was dying. Seraphine is coming back, I said, my voice flat, my mind racing. She's coming back tonight. And you're in this state. You can't even stand, listen. What good are you to me like this? You can't protect me. It was a cruel thing to say, but I saw it hit him like a physical blow. It was the only language he understood, duty. I will be ready, he ground out. How? You need blood. You've lost too much. You need to hunt. I cannot leave you. His eyes met mine, and the raw, desperate hunger in them was terrifying. But it was not just hunger for me. It was the hollow, empty hunger of starvation. I cannot leave the house, and there is no one here. No one but me. The words hung in the air between us. I looked at this proud, broken creature. This monster who had chosen disgrace and agony over my fear. He had taken a brand for me. He had let his enemies go. I backed out of the library, my heart hammering so hard it felt like it would break through my ribs. I didn't run from him. I ran for him. I went to my room. The silver tray from yesterday was still on my table. I grabbed the small, pearl-handled fruit knife. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. It was perfectly, terrifyingly still. I walked back and stood in the doorway of my room. The magical, warded threshold was at my feet. He had followed me. He was standing in the hall, 10 feet away, watching me. He was a predator, held in check by a line of silver and salt. He looked at the knife in my hand, and his whole body went rigid. Novia, he whispered. It was a warning. Do not. You're dying, I said, my voice clear. And Seraphine is coming back. You will not be weak when she gets here. I will not be a coward. You do not know what you are doing, he rasped, his eyes fixed on my throat. His fangs were starting to extend, pale and sharp against his split lip. He was fighting himself, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You can't come in, I said, stating the fact. And I can't. I can't go out there. I know what would happen. You're too hungry. He squeezed his eyes shut. It was a yes. So, I said, my voice shaking just a little. It has to be here. On my terms. I held his gaze. I saw the prince. I saw the warrior. I saw the monster. And I saw the man who had taken a brand for me. I took a deep breath. Listen, I said, my voice ringing in the silent, broken house. I invite you in. Chapter 4. The words left my mouth and hung in the warm, sunlit air. I invite you in. For one terrible, silent heartbeat, nothing happened. Listen stood frozen in the hallway, his ruined body a statue, his face a mask of disbelief. He stared at me as if I had just spoken a language he'd never heard. Then, the world seemed to break. It was not a sound, but a feeling. A heavy, ancient snap, like 1,000-year-old rope pulled too tight. I looked down at the threshold. The intricate inlay of silver and salt, the line that had been my shield and his cage, went dark. The faint, magical shimmer it always held, the one I could only see from the corner of my eye, was extinguished. It was just a pattern on the floor. It was just wood and metal. The air in my room, once warm and safe, turned icy cold. Lucien's head tilted, his eyes closing for a brief second. A low, ragged breath tore from his chest. It was not a sigh of relief. It was the first, desperate gasp of a drowning man finally breaking the surface. When his eyes opened, they were not gray. They were not blue. They were black. Pure, hungry, endless black. "You have no idea," he rasped, the words broken. "What you have done." He took one slow step. His boot, stained with the mud and blood of the previous night, crossed the threshold. It made a small, gritty sound on the polished floor of my bedroom. My floor. I was holding the fruit knife so hard my knuckles were white. My hand was shaking, but I held it out. "You need to heal. Just take what you need." He was inside my room. He was 3 feet away. The sheer size of him, no longer kept at a distance, was overwhelming. He filled my sanctuary, his coldness and his power pushing all the air out. He looked at the knife in my hand. He looked at my wrist. A low and terrifying growl, vibrated in his chest. "No." His hand moved faster than my eye could follow. He didn't take the knife. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was a band of steel. The knife clattered, useless, to the floor. "Not that," he hissed, his voice a guttural shadow of itself. "Not enough." I had a single, frantic moment to be terrified. It wasn't enough. I tried to pull back, but it was like pulling against a mountain. I was a doll in his grip. "Listen." I breathed, my one word of protest. It was a mistake. My breath, the movement of my lips, the life in me, it broke the last thread of his control. He didn't push me. He didn't ask. He threw me. My back slammed against the solid, carved wood post of my canopy bed. The air was knocked from my lungs in a painful whoosh. Before I could even gasp, he was on me. He wasn't a prince. He wasn't a guardian. He was a monster. He was a storm. One of his hands pinned both of my wrists above my head, crushing them against the wood. His grip was impossibly strong. I was completely, utterly trapped. His other hand went to my jaw, tilting my head, baring my throat. His touch wasn't gentle. It was possessive. It was ownership. I was staring into his eyes. They were inches from mine. The black had consumed the blue, and all I saw was a starving, primal need. "Please." I whimpered, but the word was stolen by his mouth. He didn't kiss me. He claimed me. His lips were ice cold against my heated skin, a shocking, brutal contrast. He pressed his mouth to the curve of my neck, breathing me in. I felt the sharp, cold tips of his fangs graze my pulse. They were a promise of pain. I am sorry," he breathed against my skin. And then he bit me. Pain. Bright, sharp, and blinding. It was a white-hot fire, a scream that I choked back into a strangled gasp. It was nothing like I could have imagined. It was a violation. He made a low, desperate sound against my throat, a sound of pure, agonized relief. His entire body pressed against mine, pinning me to the bedpost, and he drank. I felt the life pulling out of me. It was a strange, horrifying, liquid warmth, a river flowing from me to him. His grip on my wrists tightened, his body trembling with the force of his hunger. He was a man dying of thirst, and I was the well. Then, the pain began to change. It didn't fade, but something else joined it. A slow, insidious heat that started in my throat and spread outward. It was a liquid fire, a tingling venom that raced through my veins. My head went light. The room, lit in its warm, golden hour tones, began to spin. My legs, which had been braced to kick, suddenly felt like they were full of water. He drank deeper. The rhythmic pull was mesmerizing, terrible. I could feel the wounds on his back, the brand on his shoulder, healing. I could feel my life force knitting his flesh back together. It was the most intimate, awful connection I had ever felt. The venom was working. The fear was still there, but it was wrapped in a thick, hazy cotton. The pain was a distant, pulsing star. My body, against my will, betrayed me. My spine arched, my head fell back, giving him better access. I hated it. I hated him. I hated that this poison was making me weak, making me pliant. He felt the shift. He felt my surrender. A low, primal growl tore from his chest. It was the sound of the animal winning. He drank harder, faster, his hunger turning from desperation to greed. He was losing himself. He was lost. This was the twist. This was the loss of control I had unleashed. He was not just healing. He was feeding. And he was not stopping. My heart was hammering, a panicked bird in a cage. But it was slowing down. The room was getting darker. The golden light was fading to black at the edges. He was killing me. He was too lost in the blood, in the venom, in the first real meal he'd had in. I didn't know how long. Listen. My voice was a useless, airy whisper. I couldn't get enough breath. Stop. Please stop. My words were nothing. He was deaf. I had one last, desperate surge of strength. I was a coward, but I did not want to die. I stopped fighting his grip and, with the last of my will, I lifted my free hand, the one that wasn't pinned, the one that had been at my side, and I touched his face. My fingers, weak and trembling, brushed against the healing cut on his cheek. His skin was no longer cold. It was warm, flush with my blood, my life. At my touch, his whole body went rigid. He ripped his mouth from my throat, a wet, tearing sound that made me cry out. He stumbled back, his chest heaving, his fangs long and sharp, his mouth and chin covered in my blood. He looked alive. The dull gray exhaustion was gone. The wounds on his back were no longer raw. His skin had color. And his eyes were a terrifying, brilliant, electric blue. They were the color of a winter sky, burning with a power that hadn't been there before. I slid down the bedpost, my knees giving out, and crumpled to the floor. I clutched my hand to my throat. It was wet. But the wound, it wasn't gushing. It was pulsing with a strange, warm tingle. We stared at each other across the room. Me on the floor, weak and violated in my safe room. Him, standing tall, healed, and splattered with my blood. The monster was back. He looked at his hands, his fingers stained red. He looked at me, at the terror on my face. The horror that washed over his features was 1,000 times worse than my own. It was the horror of a good man waking from a nightmare to find he was the villain. "What?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "What have I?" He couldn't finish. He couldn't look at me. He turned, a blur of shadow and shame, and fled. He ran from my room, from the scene of his crime, as if the hunters themselves were at his heels. I was left alone on the floor. My room was freezing cold, the door was wide open, and the silver line on the threshold was dark and dead. I was dizzy, I was weak, and I could feel my heart beating against the strange, hot tingle of his venom in my veins. I had saved him. I had unleashed him. And Seraphine was still coming. Chapter 5. For a long time, I just lay on the floor, my cheek pressed against the cold wood. The room was a mess of my own making. The spilled knife, the faint, metallic scent of my own blood in the air, the open, gaping doorway. My sanctuary was gone. The magic was dead. My throat. I slowly lifted a trembling hand to my neck. My fingers, expecting to find a mangled, wet ruin, met skin. It was tender. It was hot, as if I had a terrible sunburn. But there was no new blood. I pulled my hand away and looked. My fingers were clean. I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking, and ran to the oval mirror above my dressing table. The wound was gone. It was impossible. It had been a deep, tearing bite. I had felt his fangs sink into my flesh. Now, all that remained was a faint, angry-looking pink mark, like a freshly healed scar, delicate as a lace pattern. Even as I watched, the pinkness seemed to be fading, sinking back into my normal skin tone. His venom. I remembered the liquid fire, the tingling poison that had made me weak. It hadn't just been an anesthetic to make me pliant. It had been a catalyst. It was healing me. A new, strange feeling was thrumming under my skin. It was a low, resonant hum, like a tuning fork had been struck somewhere deep inside me. I felt aware. My senses were sharper. The golden light of the setting sun seemed impossibly bright, the shadows in the corners of my room impossibly dark. And I could feel him. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't a voice. It was a presence. A dark, throbbing knot of shame and power and self-hatred. It was coming from somewhere downstairs. He was still in the house. He had violated me. He had drunk my blood and nearly killed me. And now I was connected to him. I was a part of him, and he, this venom, this strange energy, was a part of me. My fear, which should have been a screaming, primal thing, was muffled. It was still there, but it was overshadowed by a new cold anger. And something else. A strange, possessive, horrifying thought. He is mine. I looked at the open door. I was no longer a prisoner. But I was also no longer safe. The sun was sinking fast, the warm, romantic daylight giving way to the bloody, bruised colors of twilight. Sundown. Seraphine was coming. I walked into my bathroom, turned on the tap, and splashed cold water on my face. I scrubbed at my neck at the memory of his mouth. I put on a thick, velvet robe, pulling it tight, as if the heavy fabric could be a new kind of armor. My fear was gone, replaced by a brittle, icy resolve. I would not be a coward. Not again. I walked out of my room, my bare feet silent on the marble floor of the hall. I didn't hesitate. I followed the dark, humming thread of his presence. He was in the grand hall. He was standing in front of the massive, shattered front doors, which he must have repaired and locked. He was staring at them, his back to me, his entire body rigid. He was a sentinel, preparing for a siege. He was clean. He had changed into a fresh black shirt, buttoned all the way to his throat. His dark hair was damp, as if he had just washed my blood from it. He was the perfect, cold prince once more, a creature of marble and shadow. But I could feel the truth. I could feel the roaring, chaotic power under his skin, the shame vibrating from him like a physical force. "You should not be out of your room," he said, his voice dead. He didn't turn around. "The magic is gone," I replied. My voice didn't shake. It sounded strange to my own ears, lower, more resonant. "The venom. I am aware. Are you all right?" "I am, restored." He said the word like it was a curse. "You're welcome," I snapped, and the sound of my own bitterness surprised me. He flinched. He finally, slowly, turned to face me. My breath caught. The monster was gone. The prince was back. But his eyes, they were the electric, impossible blue I had seen in my room. They were burning. They were no longer the color of a winter sky. They were the color of the lightning that tore it apart. He was beautiful. He was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. He was healed. The cut on his cheek was gone. The split on his lip was gone. He looked like a god of the night, carved from moonlight and rage. "I hurt you," he stated. His voice was raw. "You did." I didn't look away. I couldn't. I lost control. "I know." He took a step toward me, and I held my ground. The hum between us intensified, a warning, a pull. What I did, Novia, it was unforgivable. I am a guardian. I am. I was, your protector. And now what are you? I whispered. His gaze was heavy, possessive. It dropped to my throat, to the smooth, healed skin where his mark should have been. I am yours. My heart hammered. He didn't mean it as a romantic vow. He meant it as a fact. A curse. A bond. The venom, he said, his voice strained. My blood. It has tied us. What you are feeling, this connection, it is a contamination. A perversion of the bond. It feels. I searched for the word. Like I'm finally awake. He looked horrified. Novia, no. What I am is a plague. You are human. You are light. I have. Boom. 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 The sound was not a knock. It was a fist. A heavy, iron knocker on the front door, slamming with contemptuous, impatient force. Lucin's entire body changed. The shame vanished, the self-loathing was burned away by a sudden, white-hot, protective rage. He snapped into the warrior, the guardian. All that power I had given him, all that life I had poured back into him, was now a shield. He moved to stand between me and the door. She is here, he said, his voice a low growl. What do we do? I asked, my newfound bravery wavering. You, he said, will go back to your room. You will lock the door. It will not stop her, but it is a symbol. You are my charge. You will not come out. Do you understand me? No matter what you hear. No matter what she says. But she'll know the ward is broken. I whispered, the panic returning. She'll kill you for what you did. A small, grim, dangerous smile touched his lips. It was the first smile I had ever seen on his face, and it was the most feral, terrifying expression I had ever witnessed. Yes, he whispered, his electric blue eyes burning with a dark, primal fire. She will know the ward is broken. She will know that I am no longer weak. He leaned in, his voice dropping to an intimate, possessive hiss. And she will know why. She will smell you on me. She will smell my blood in you. She wanted me to remember what I am, Novia. Boom. 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 The door shuddered in its frame. Lucin looked at me, a king in his own, broken hall. She is about to get her wish. Listen. Go. Now. I ran. I did as he said. I fled back to my room, back to my illusion of safety, and I slammed the door. I turned the heavy, useless brass lock. My heart was a drum, beating in time with the new, humming energy in my veins. I pressed my ear to the wood, listening. I heard the heavy sound of the main bolts being drawn back. I heard the front door of the mansion groan open. And then I heard Seraphine's voice, sharp and cold as ice. Well, Prince. You look better. What, precisely, have you been feeding on? Chapter 6. My ear was pressed so hard against the door I could feel the grain of the wood. The lock I had turned was a child's toy, a complete fantasy. I wasn't listening with just my ears anymore. I was listening with my blood. That strange, humming connection to listen was a live wire inside me. I heard Seraphine's icy, contemptuous voice. What, precisely, have you been feeding on? And I felt Lucin's response. It was a cold, pure, exhilarating wave of power. It was the feeling of a king on his throne, absolute and immovable. His voice was a low, velvet growl that vibrated through the wood and straight into my bones. That, he said, and I could hear the feral smile in his words, is a matter between me and my charge. Your charge. Seraphine's voice was no longer arrogant. It was sharp with disbelief. She had stepped inside. I heard her shoes click on the marble. I could feel her moving closer to him. You broke the treaty. You fed on her. The human. I could feel her sniffing the air. I cringed, pulling my robe tighter as if she could smell me all the way up here. You are contaminated, she shrieked, her voice losing its icy control and cracking with pure fury. You have bonded with immortal. You have ruined the bloodline. The council will execute you for this. Then they are welcome to try. His voice was so cold, so final, it scared me more than her shouting. You think this snack, makes you strong? Seraphine hissed. You were always a sentimental fool, listen. And now you are a tainted one. I will take the girl, and I will drag your corpse back to the council myself. A whoosh of displaced air. A sound so fast I almost missed it. But I felt it. I felt Seraphine lunge. And I felt Listen move. A jolt of pure, kinetic energy shot through the bond, so strong it made me gasp and stumble back from the door. It was like a bolt of lightning had struck my heart. It was his power, his speed, his fury. A sound, a heavy, sickening crash echoed from the grand hall. Something wooden shattered. It was followed by a sharp, choked-off scream. Seraphine's. It was a sound of pure, shocked pain. I grabbed the doorknob, my hand trembling. No. Stay. He told me to stay. You. Seraphine's voice was a gurgle. You are faster. I am healed, Listen snarled. His voice was no longer a prince's. It was the monster's. It was the voice of the creature that had pinned me to my bed. You came here and you put your filthy hand on me. You branded me. You thought I was weak. Another crash. This one was glass. It sounded like the tall mirror in the foyer had exploded. I felt another jolt, but this one was different. It was pain. His pain. A sharp, searing line of fire across his ribs. She had cut him. I cried out, my hand flying to my own side. The bond was a two-way street. No. I was blind. I was locked in a room while he was fighting for me, and I could feel it. I could feel the cut, and then I felt his own incredible healing power, now fueled by my blood rush to the wound. The pain vanished, replaced by a hot, tingling surge. What is this? Seraphine's voice was now tinged with something new. Not just rage. Fear. What is her blood? It is mine, he roared. I couldn't stand it. I was a coward. I was a coward hiding in my room while he bled for me, while he fought for me. Seraphine was right. I tore the lock open. The heavy brass felt like paper. I wrenched the door open and ran into the hall. Novia, no. His shout was a command, a desperate roar. But I didn't listen. I rounded the corner of the main staircase and skidded to a stop, my bare feet sliding on the cold marble. The grand hall was destroyed. The front door was a splintered ruin, hanging open to the cold night air. The mirror was 1,000 glittering shards. And in the center of the hall, in a pool of moonlight, they stood. No, he stood. Seraphine was on her knees. Her beautiful, icy blue dress was torn, and her arm was bent at an angle that was sickeningly wrong. She was staring up at him, her face a mask of terror. Listen was standing over her. He was a creature of pure, magnificent, terrifying power. The wounds on his back were gone. His shirt was torn open, revealing the healed cut on his ribs. His electric blue eyes were burning so brightly they seemed to light the room, and his fangs were fully extended. He was breathing heavily, his entire body vibrating with a power that was not just his. It was ours. He had Seraphine by the hair, his fist tangled in her silver blonde locks, holding her head up. You're an abomination, she choked out, blood dripping from her lip. I am awake, he corrected, his voice a low, lethal purr. He looked at her and he smiled. That same, feral, terrifying smile. And you're the one who woke me. He raised his other hand, his claws not claws. His nails were just long and sharp as talons ready to end her. Listen, stop. I screamed. My voice cut through the violence. He froze. His head snapped toward me, his eyes wide. The monster was still there, but the man heard me. In that one brief second, Seraphine's eyes darted from him to me. She saw me, standing there in my robe, my hand on my throat, my feet bare. She saw me, not as a cowering girl, but as something else. Her eyes widened in a new, dawning horror. She wasn't just afraid of him. She was afraid of me. It's you, she whispered, her gaze fixed on me. Your blood, it's life. Listen used her moment of distraction. He didn't kill her. He threw her. He hurled her across the room with all his new, terrifying strength. She slammed into the far wall and collapsed in a heap, unmoving for a second before letting out a low, broken groan. "Get out," Listen snarled. He didn't look at her. He was looking at me. His chest was still heaving. The monster was still there, just beneath the surface, fighting for control. Seraphine scrambled to her feet, clutching her broken arm. She was an emissary of the council, a creature of immense power. And she was terrified. She looked at Listen, who was a vibrating wall of death between her and me. She looked at me, the human girl who was the source of it all. The council. She spat, her voice a broken whisper. The council will hear of this. This bond, this unholy alliance. They will come for you both. They will burn this house to the ground. Let them come, Listen said, his voice dangerously quiet. I am waiting. Seraphine gave one last, terrified look at me. Then, like a shadow, she was gone. She fled into the night, a defeated, broken thing. The front door, splintered and ruined, slammed shut behind her with a sound like a thunderclap, propelled by his silent, furious will. And then, there was silence. Just the sound of the wind whistling through the broken door. Just the sound of my heart hammering in my ears. Just the sound of his ragged, heavy breathing. He was in the center of the hall, in the moonlight. I was at the top of the stairs. The monster who had just defeated an emissary and the man who was tied to me were one and the same. He slowly turned to face me. His electric blue eyes met mine across the ruined hall. The fury of the fight was still burning in them, but beneath it was the dark, agonizing shame I had felt earlier. And something new. Something hot, dark, and terribly possessive. He had saved me. I had saved him. We had destroyed Seraphine. And in doing so, we had just declared war on his entire world. Epilogue. 3 months passed. The house was no longer a prison. It was a fortress. The broken door had been replaced with one of solid iron, wrapped in oak. The shattered windows were refitted, the wards were different. We didn't need the old magic. We were the magic. I sat on the edge of the library table, the one he had repaired, watching him. The warm, golden hour light that I had always loved was streaming in, but it was different now. It didn't just illuminate the room. I felt like I could taste it. My senses were still heightened, a permanent gift from his venom. Listen was standing by the fireplace, reading from an ancient, leather-bound book. He was dressed in a simple, soft-looking linen shirt. He was calm. He was peaceful. But I was not fooled. I knew the monster that slept just beneath his skin. I could feel it, a low, purring engine, always humming in time with my own heart. We were tied. The bond, which he had called a contamination, had become everything. It was a silent conversation. I felt his calm, his focus. He felt my impatience. He looked up, as if he'd heard my thought. His eyes, no longer burning with that electric, terrifying light, were a soft, clear blue. The color of the sky after a storm. "You are bored," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm waiting," I replied, hopping off the table. "They know we're here. They know what we are. Why haven't they come?" "The council is old, Novia," he said, closing the book. "They are slow. They are arrogant. They cannot believe what Seraphine told them. A human healing a prince? A bond? They are debating. They are arguing. They are afraid." "Good," I said, walking toward him. I stopped just before him, looking up. I was no longer afraid of his height, his power. It felt familiar. It felt like mine. Let them be afraid. His hand came up, his fingers brushing my throat, right where his fangs had been. The mark was long gone, but he touched it like it was a permanent, invisible brand. "I am sorry, Novia. For what I did. For what I unleashed on you." "I'm not," I whispered. I had been a girl in a cage. Now I was something more. I didn't know what I was, but I was not weak. And I was not alone. "They will come," he said, his voice a low promise. "They will not let this stand. They will come for you." "No," I said, putting my hand on his chest. I could feel his heart, beating slow and steady beneath my palm. A heart that, he had once told me, barely beat at all. It was stronger now. They will come for us. He smiled. A real smile this time. Not the feral, frightening grin of the monster, but the soft, small smile of the man. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And that is the end of our story. Thank you so much for listening. What a journey that was. I am so curious to know, what part of the story did you find the most intriguing? Was it the moment Novia broke the ward and invited Lucen in, knowing what he was? Or was it the final fight, when Seraphine realized that Novia's blood had turned Lucen into something more? And what do you think will happen when the full council finally arrives? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. As my channel is still young and trying to grow, your subscription is a huge support from you, and it truly means the world to me. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you in the next interesting story.